June 2017. Madam Clerk, would you please call a roll?
Thank you. Mr. Fracassi?
Here.
Mr. Brightwell?
Here.
Ms. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Mandelbaum?
Here.
Ms. Seymour is excused this evening. Mr. Cruz?
Present.
Mr. Frazier?
Here.
You have 6 members present.
Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For everyone here in the audience and at home watching, this is a one-item agenda, and it's to pass the city budget for 2017-18. This is a public hearing, and I will open a public hearing. If anyone wishes to speak on the budget, please come to the microphone. Give your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Pamela Gerald, P.O. Box 155, Southfield, Michigan, 48037-0155. For the residents that still want to reach me, and over 30 years later I'm still around, my telephone number is 248-346-0439. Every year we do the budget, and you've heard me say over the years, why doesn't the city of Southfield consider doing what Oakland County does? They do a 3-year budget. I don't understand the reason for a yearly budget when other jurisdictions in the county does a 3-year budget and it seems to work. Second of all, in the budget, I don't really see, and I haven't seen the entire budget, but I've been at the meetings. I don't see where they have put the Northland expenditures on there. Now, we talked about the fact that that was included in the budget. Where is it on your line items? How much you've spent for Northland? Where does the money come from that you're using for the Northland expenditures? Where did the money come from for you to buy that piece of property? So I'm thinking that the budget needs to be a little bit more transparent. I think that $99 million bond proposal money needs to be a little bit more transparent. And it just appears as if we talk around things, but we don't really get down to the nitty-gritty with the figures. I'm wondering why the city has not explored the option, since it always seems to be a difference of whether or not we're going to balance the budget, whether or not we have the money. We keep using the same auditors every year. And I like Plant Moran. I think they're a great company. But why don't we submit to a forensic audit and start looking at the figures just a little bit closer? You know, thank God we have an elected treasurer and an elected city clerk that we at least have some checks and balances about the money. But it's up to you guys to insist that all of those things be included. I don't really see anything about Northland, and I always stand to be corrected. If there's something in the budget that speaks specifically to Northland or that bond proposal money, I'd like to see it. And I'd like for you guys to go back and just give a brief overview with the public safety millage from 2011. Did the fire department and the police department ever get their just due? So those are some of the questions I have. You may choose not to answer it, that's fine, but you know I'll keep coming back meeting after meeting after meeting until I get some answers. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak? If so, please come to the microphone, give your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes. Seeing no one, I will declare the public hearing closed. Council?
Chairman,
Mr. Fracassi?
can I ask either our finance director or Jim or Fred, in your the Southfield budget adoption for tonight, the fiscal impact, when it says the $2 million or 3.7%. Is that, I don't recall, what was the amount that the state sent down for, is it 1%?
Proposal A, our proposal A cap was
It could either
just,
be, it could be 5% or less.
right.
That
And the
index is,
and the inflation rate for the state for property assessments to go up that the tax could be levied against it was just under 1%. And
I guess what I was getting at is that property values in the city really went up quite a bit. And I was just wondering how much we could capture out of that amount of money. Try to get my attention, Nancy, no? Okay. You know what I mean, Fred?
yeah,
I mean, if we're limited, because I know housing is up almost 13, 14%. Some of the commercial has gone way up, maybe 20, 25%.
in the true market, property values are up in the double percents.
Yeah.
But because of Proposal A passed in 1994, we are capped at inflation not to exceed 5%. The inflation rate was just under 1%. And, therefore, we can only, for those homes that have not changed ownership, or those commercial properties that have not changed ownership, we can only increase by that just under 1%. It was 0.9%. And Mr. Chairman, we do have a very quick presentation, if council would like to see, for the viewing audience.
Yeah, and I would also like to mention, Mr. Chairman, that as far as our road millage, we went through it at the library the other night,
That's,
and it was very extensive, and everybody had about an hour and a half, 2 hours of
that is,
discussion afterwards, and I think everything was answered, and it was very informative, and I want to thank everybody that put that together.
thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the
Okay,
presentation.
rather than have the council ask more questions, why don't I have Austin run his presentation, and then if we have questions after that,
And
we can deal
Mr. Chairman,
with it.
if I, like to just recognize Austin Michaels and Jim Pierce, both Deputy Directors of Finance in our Fiscal Services Group. The budget process actually starts in December, the preceding December of each year, and begins intensely in January. I should also recognize Karen Ellie for the effort, because she is a staff person who is the quarterbacks and puts this together, working with Austin and Jim as well. I'm going to turn it over to Austin then.
Thank you very much. Our starting point for the budget is first to report on our latest completed audit. That was the year ended June 30th, 2016, and our position of fund balance at that point. At the beginning of the year, we started with a general fund balance of $25.8 million. We increased that by $5.5 million, and we started fiscal 2017 with $31.38 million in our fund balance. We did get an unqualified audit opinion, which is the best opinion we can get from the auditors. The proposed budget here was designed with the goals of the mayor and council as set forth in the 2015 visioning session. We are going to offer first-rate public safety services, provide outstanding cultural services in both our library and Parks and Recs department. We're going to continue to improve our infrastructure and continue our efforts to strengthen our tax base, both commercial and residential. First, we look at the revenue snapshot. Again, property taxes makes up the largest portion of our revenue. For this year, we're at about 61.5%. We did have some slight changes in the millage rate, which we will go over in a subsequent slide. Our state shared revenue increased just barely. It's been pretty consistent the past couple years and projected going forward. And that's, again, we're going to look at that a little more in a subsequent slide. And we did budget the use of fund balance for about $360,000. Our expenditures, our largest expenditures, again, on public safety, in line with the goals of council and the mayor. $41.8 million for police and fire services, makes up approximately 60% of the general fund expenditures. Our general government expenditures are around 12.1 million, or 17% of the general fund, and that includes our elected officials, our administration, and basically all of our support services that are necessary to run the city. Combined, our general fund expenditures are 70.4 million, which is a 3.7% increase over the current fiscal year that we are in. And overall, our total proposed expenditures came in at about 165 million, which is a 10% decrease from the current fiscal year we're in. And we're going to look at these in detail as well. Our infrastructure investments, the past couple years we have done extensive road and water and sewer projects. We are scaling back slightly for this proposed budget year. Our total projects in the current fiscal year were 32. In the proposed budget, we're looking at 14. And then when we take a look at our employees, we can see that we've had a slight increase over our 15-16 year and about flat for our proposed 17-18 year at 560 career employees. This slide really shows you the property tax appeals and chargeback reserve that we've established in the various funds. These total approximately 2.7 million, and we'll revisit those as the appeals and chargebacks come in. For our proposed capital projects for the 17-18 year, we've got 1 local street project, 5 major street projects, and 8 water and sewer projects, totaling about 24.8 million, which is about half of where we were in the current fiscal year. This is a little more detail on our general fund revenues. Overall, the projected 2017-18 revenues come in at $70.4 million, which does represent a 3.7% increase over the current fiscal year. This slide shows the breakdown of those revenues. Again, property taxes as our largest portion of that at 61.5%, followed by fees, reimbursements, and other at 14%. And then our state shared revenue, which historically has been about 10% or slightly above, has dipped down to about 9.4%. Overall, the general fund expenditures are in line with the general fund revenues, 70.4 million. Again, that's a 3.7% increase over the current fiscal year that we're in. This shows the uses of those funds, and again, public safety is our largest expenditure here, making up just under 70% of our budgets for both 16-17 and 17-18, the general government and support services, and our public services. Looking at our property tax revenues, again, that's 61.5% of our revenues. Our operating mills of just under 24 are generating an expected 57.2 million in revenue. Our non-operating mills of about 2.6 are generating 7.3 for a grand total of 64, just under 64.5 million in total. Our taxable value without the captures is $2.4 billion. When we look at the changes from the current fiscal year to the proposed 17-18 fiscal year in our millage rate, we have increased the police and fire pension slightly by 0.1535 mils. We have decreased the Public Act 59 by that 0.0004. We have decreased our change in the debt service mill by 0.12 for an overall total change of 0.0331 mils. Looking at our tax base, it has increased by about 2.2% or $50 million. And this is what our tax base is made up of. As you can see, it's 39% residential, 44.5% commercial, 2% industrial, and 14.5% personal. So the tax bill for a resident, and this is based on a home with a market value of $100,000 and a taxable value of half that at $50,000. Looking at our major services we provide with these mills, the total city property tax paid would be about $1,300. And that $1,300 is less than half of the total taxes levied on a Southfield resident. The major changes from the current fiscal year to the proposed 17-18 budget. In the general fund, the building revenue is up 34%, and that's based on the approved fees that council adopted. The district court revenue is down about 10.7%, and our investment income is up 75%. The other side, the general fund expenditures, the significant variances there. Fiscal services is increased by 15%, with a corresponding decrease in support services of 17.9%. And our police and fire both increased by around 4%. Total expenditures are up 3.7% from the current fiscal year. Looking at all of the funds, general fund again increased by 3.7%. Major streets increased by a little over 43%, with a decrease in local streets of 52%. Water and sewer is also down about 26%. Our total budget did decrease by about 10% or $18 million, and that is primarily attributable to fewer capital projects for our streets, water, and sewer. The state shared revenue, and this is based on projections from the state of Michigan, is essentially flat. There is a slight increase from our fiscal 16 of 6.4 up to our proposed fiscal 18 of almost 6. Looking at the grants that we've received over the past 10 years, they have plateaued for the past couple of years, and we are predicting them to be in line with the current fiscal year for our 17-18 budget year. And the organizational chart here, again, has the citizens of the city on top to remind us all that that's who we work for. That ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Jim, is there anything you'd like to add? No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Council,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Fracassi.
I'd like to move the approval of the Southfield budget and adopt it of 2017, 2018.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Fracassi, supported by Mr. Brightwell, that we approve the budget as presented for 2017, 2018. Let's have a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, would you please call a roll?
Thank you. Mr. Brightwell?
Yes. Support.
Mr. Fracassi?
Yes.
Mr. Mandelbaum?
Yes.
Ms. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes,
You have 6 members in favor. Motion passed.
thank you. Is there anything else to come before the council as far as the budget is concerned this evening?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Mandelbaum?
I just had a couple questions on some of the numbers they presented for clarification purposes.
You already voted.
I understand that. The question I had though is in regards to the water rates and what they have they changed in it by how much? I couldn't quickly find last year's information.
Let me check on that.
Is it up just a little bit? Drains were down though. I used to remember that now.
Water rates are actually being kept stable this year for all residents.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We have one person that has requested communications. Ms. Pamela Gerald, if you'd come to the microphone and give your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Well, I think the residents know how to get in touch with me, and I'm certainly giving my P.O. box on the form that I fill out to speak before council. Again, I'm going to ask you about the expenditures for Northland. Where recorded in the budget are the figures regarding Northland? We know that we've purchased it for about $2.4 million. I said during the Ronnie Dahl interview regarding contamination at City Hall that Northland would probably cost between 20 and 32 million before it would be developed. We want to know what you've spent. We want to know where you're getting the money from. We want to know where at in the budget do you have Northland in terms of being on a line item. Where is the money for the $99 million bond proposal? Now, the reason why I'm going to bring this up because the bond proposal money is in the budget. Ms. Morris, when you ran for council, you said we need an engineer to fix the roads. Now, you just had a town hall meeting talking about the $99 million bond proposal and hopefully how that money is vested into the budget. Did you say at any time that when the construction is done in people's neighborhoods, that it would be restored back to how it used to be? Because that's important. When you relate the construction, the money that's allocated, and in the budget, that was said to the people. That when you do some construction, that you would restore their particular community with that budget money and that $99 million talking about the roads. So we need some more dialogue between the council, the administration, and the people. But more importantly, my concern is about Northland, because it doesn't seem right, a lot of what's going on in terms of Northland, those expenditures, the prices just keep going up. And do we have a surplus? Have we properly funded the employees' retirement? Because Plant Moran said when they were doing the auditing, preparing for this budget, that the city workers' pensions were underfunded. So if the city workers' pensions are underfunded, does that include administration's retirement money? Is the clerk, city administrator, city attorney, are their pensions underfunded? Or is it just the workers? So we need a little bit more dialogue about this budget, a little bit more transparency, and the $99 million bond proposal and how all of that fits together for the citizens at the top.
Thank you. Do you have anything else to present to us from the Finance Department?
To answer Councilman Mandelbaum's question, the water and sewer rates did go up by $1 per MCF.
And Mr. Chairman, that is pretty much the pass-through of what we're getting from the regional system, the Detroit regional system. And I'll point out, our water rates are still the lowest. We're in the lowest quartile in all of Oakland County and pretty much the region. But we simply passed along the increases we had from the Great Lakes Water Authority, as well as SACWA. There's substantial emphasis being made. And I'll also point out that if Larry Searles was here, with SACWA, you'll hear that the investments we made in our water and sewer system have tightened us up, that we've actually have less sewage passing through our system today because we've increased the amount of infiltration going into that sanitary system. One of the things you have is you buy the water, your supply, and then you pay for it to be disposed of. That disposal meter at 8 Mile and Southfield Road has less volume going through it today. I'd like to comment a couple of the questions that are made. We don't do 3-year budgeting here because the charter requires a 1-year requirement. We'd love to be doing that, but again, the charter requires that we do budgeting on an annual basis. Regarding Northland, it has been said ad nauseum that the 2 funding sources for Northland were the tax base initiative, which had $8.25 million, and the LERF fund, which is a fund that's been in existence in Southfield since the early 80s. It's been used for internal loans. That has been structured as a loan with another $12 million. The funding source for Northland is $20.5 million between those 2 items. The fact of the matter is the numbers are decreasing. We recently had a pleasant surprise that that some of the environmental costs were less than we budgeted. So we'll continue to go through that exercise. There has been a Northland budget adopted separately from the general fund or the other public works budget. The resolution adopted carries those monies forward into the next fiscal year. On the capital, on the $99 million bond, we have spent to date a little over $43 million of that bond. On an annual basis, we adopt a list of projects and the amount to be spent of those bond proceeds. At the town hall, which will be aired publicly, there's a lot of good information in that town hall session. And you'll see the list of projects, what we've done to date, what we've spent, what's going to be done for the next 3 years. Again, the budget we've adopted this year has 1 local street and I believe 5 major street projects. In the past few years, we've had a lot more local streets projects. What's not reflected, tonight we saw a grant number, and because the federal grants don't come into our coffers, what you don't see, you're looking at grants for typical things. The slide you saw up there tonight does not include any of your grants from the feds for road projects because we account for those separately. We saw at the town hall that another $19 million in federal grants have been leveraged. Though I just wanted, those were the questions that came up, and that is the administration's response.
Okay. Is there anything else? If there's nothing else, I'll declare this meeting over.